really official. I feel like I should be doing stand-up. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, I feel like one thing we can all agree on is the scenery. Yeah? It's ridiculous. Fun fact, Joe Wright, the director, bought a house and he can see that folly where they have the like really intense scene of, you know, the first proposal. You can see that space in it. So it's a big fan. So I'm so excited to see everybody here. I'm Jen Daniel. It's nice to meet you. I actually happen to be teaching a class this semester on Jane Austen. Some of my students are here. And in 23 days, we are leaving to go to Bath for a couple of days, and then we will be going to London for a couple of days after that to walk around and pretend we're in the Regency era. It is Jane's 250th birthday, in case you didn't know, and last year was Queen Charlotte's 250th birthday. So good times. All right, so I have questions prepared, but I'm hoping y'all have questions because that's way more fun. So who are my 1995 lovers? BBC. Okay, how does it stack up? How do you feel?
The BBC version I absolutely adored.
Yeah,
So
it's
okay.
okay.
It's okay, but
Yeah.
that one is.
Yeah. That's sacrilegious to some of you folks, right? Who are my 2005 Keira Knightley? I see you, Emma. Yeah, Claire. Yeah, okay. Any questions that stand out first? Maybe we'll just start there. Is there something you don't understand and you're like, I don't know why they did this? Because I will tell you, I have some feels about it, but I want to hear other people's. It's Jane, right?
I'm Jenny.
Jenny, I was close.
I always call the one we just watched the Hollywood version.
Yes.
Of because the ending really isn't that wrap up is not in the book.
Yeah.
It is the Hollywood nod to make the audience feel better.
Yeah, Jenny, you are not wrong. Does anybody know the trivia about the ending of this movie? Claire.
Is it that the U.S. has a different cut than the rest of the world?
So in the UK, it ends with Donald Sutherland. You know, if anyone comes for Mary and Kitty. And in fact, one of the things I do love about Jane is she doesn't end at the marriage in the books. She actually goes on a little bit and will tell you more. So in the book, she's going to tell you that Jane and Bingley don't stay long at Netherfield because it's a little too close to the Bennets, right? They couldn't do it. And then the second ending with them, you know, sitting on, I guess, whatever the platform is out in the lake, is the U.S. version, because, and I think I have this quite right from Joe Wright, who's the director. The U.S. likes it a little more sugary, was the word. And I would prefer the UK ending because it ends on quintessential Jane Austen. The irony, right? Like and if you've never, Emma, don't laugh, and Madeline, if you've ever been on YouTube, there's a guy named, what is this, Shaky Sparks or something, and he does something called Thug Notes, and he does all kinds of classics, and his Thug Notes on Pride and Prejudice is hysterical because he spends a lot of time talking about her ability her irony. She is chock-a-block full of irony. So yeah, yes, the ending is definitely not. There's a lot of this that is not actually Austen. So I appreciate they're based on the novel. But I mean, obviously that's going to be difficult, right? This is a 2 hour and 7 minute version. The BBC is 5 hours and 27 minutes, which is obviously the miniseries is a lot closer.
What's ironic about the other ending?
About the other ending,
I haven't seen the BBC version. What's ironic about it?
Well, that one.
Or whichever ending was ironic.
That ending, the BBC ending is not ironic. The BBC ending is very traditional. It's the double wedding. It is in keeping with a trope that happens a lot in 19th century romance, is the marriage plot, right? So the whole purpose of these types of novels is women are supposed to get married because that's where their value is. This one, if they had ended it with the Donald Sutherland, it's the irony of, oh well, send Mary and Kitty in, right? I'm at my leisure, right? That little line from them.
Yeah,
but then there would be the sexual tension
Yes.
that's in the whole, this
Which,
version of the movie.
by the
that
way,
never been
Jane
addressed.
doesn't have a lot of sex in her novels. Like, the closest that you really get, and that's not to say there isn't going on, there is, y'all, there is. But she actually doesn't do a lot with that in her novels. She doesn't really have to, because her novels really, they're about love, but they're not about sex. And one of the things that I think is so hard to do in an adaptation with her is really the best parts, at least for me, and I'm looking at Dr. Shishke to see if she agrees, because this is also more of her area of study than mine. It's actually the side characters and what's happening with them. So one of my frustrations with this version are the Bennets, because in the book, Bennets really don't like each other. She is an absolute fruitcake, and he is very smart. And it's like and it's the whole point. It's why Lizzie and Darcy's marriage is a twist on the marriage plot, because she actually, that's a better version of what marriage should look like. And it's what Jane Austen brings to the table that people weren't doing before her, is marriage for love. That was not a thing, right? Marriage was still an economic sort of thing to do. Would you agree?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, and?
Well, partly what she's doing, right, is modeling different
Types of marriage.
types of marriage.
Yeah.
And some of them are cautionary tales,
Yeah.
right?
In the book, you get Charlotte and Mr. Collins, right? That is a mercenary marriage on Charlotte's part. And I'm not mad at Charlotte for it. And actually, I will tell you, this Charlotte is my favorite Charlotte. I actually like this Charlotte more than the 95. I would really like to mash the two up. I like this Mr. Collins better. Tom Hollander's hilarious. And then there's Jane and Bingley, which is actually also not quite an ideal marriage, to Mr. Bennet's point that their temperaments are too close. The Bennet's marriage is a bad one. Definitely Lydia and Wickham, bad one. So the ideal marriage in this is going to be Darcy and Lizzie, and it's not just because it's about love, but they're actually a meeting of the minds, right? They can meet each other on an intellectual level.
I was curious because I haven't read the books, but I've just seen the 1995 version
Yeah.
and this version.
Yep.
When Lady Catherine de Bourgh comes, like in
Yes.
the 1995 version, she goes into the garden. It's really
Yes.
dramatic. But in this one, she just alludes to the garden.
Yes.
She just makes a comment, like a rude comment, and then they just like in the room at night.
It is that. I thank you for saying this, because that might be my most frustrating part of this adaptation, because they gut all of Lady Catherine de Bourgh's best lines. I mean, where is obstinate headstrong girl? Right? She yells. She looks at Lydia. She looks at Lizzie. She goes, obstinate headstrong girl, right? And I mean, you really need Judi Dench to do that line, and it's not there. It's horrible. So I would imagine that was just timing, right? Like, they have to cut the time, and so they cut a big part of it. And they keep the famous line of, "Are the shades of Pemberley thus to be polluted?" But the problem is you don't really have any of the backstory of why that line matters, because she's really pushing on the fact she thinks that Lizzie is not in equal class as Darcy, and there actually is a whole part for that where Lizzie says, he's a gentleman, I am a gentleman's daughter, I am not quitting my station. And Lady Catherine doesn't feel that way. And the irony is like, Darcy doesn't have a title, but he's got lineage, bloodline, and he's got money. Lady de Bourgh happens to have all of that and the title. Yes, sir.
I thought Mr. Wickham was like really bad. Why is she so overjoyed about Lydia's marriage with that?
She's not. That's the second part that they really gut in this adaptation, is they do not give you all of the backstory between Wickham and Darcy. Although this one is much more attractive than the 95. He is very yummy to look at. And so that's another part that's, I think, with this one, that unfortunately, because of time constraints, right, they're going to have to pick and choose what part they leave in and what part they take out. And that was the storyline that actually gets cut the most, second only to Lady Catherine. He's a stinker, y'all. If you don't know, if you haven't read the books, definitely read them. They're fun. I'm looking at my students. It's a little hard at first for some people. because the language they're flowery, man. I mean, she uses a lot of words to say something. But once you get in the cadence of it, it's awesome.
I was gonna say another one, her friend Charlotte.
Mhm.
I don't remember in the 1995 version where she said anything about her age, and in
Nope.
this one she's like, I'm
That,
27.
yeah, they take a couple of liberties where they update the language, and I will say this, so my background is actually as a rhetorician, so I spend a lot of time thinking about words, and they do a good job with that, other than the ones that they leave out, but what they do update. And so that one actually, I think, holds up, because that line is giving you a couple of chapters worth that you would have gotten if you had read the book. Because in the book, Charlotte is the oldest, and the fear is that her brothers will end up having to take care of her. When she says, I need protection, unmarried women had no rights. They had no access to any sort of power at all. And getting married didn't necessarily give her power, because, that became her husband's. So when she makes that line, they're actually doing a lot of work that would have happened in the novel. So even though it's not in the novel, and definitely not in the 95 version, it works well here. And apparently people put that on birthday cakes now.
Yes.
Do you know this? It's a thing. I love that. She says, I'm 27 years old, I have no prospects.
No
I'm already
money.
a burden on my parents.
And I'm
Yeah.
scared.
And I'm scared, yeah. It's also interesting too, in this version, the Gardners don't have any children. The Gardners have like 10 children in real life. So for Mr. Gardner to pay out that money would be uncomfortable.
So how do you feel about the changes between the classic first proposal for Mr. Darcy and the way they do it in this movie?
Oh, Emma. So when Claire said, we're gonna do this talk back and you should come do it, and I'm like, oh yeah, but I don't like this version. That's not true. I do like this version. It's actually beautiful. There's so many things that Joe Wright just does so beautifully as a director. And I do tend to get frustrated when they take some liberties with the characters and the novels. So I actually love if I didn't know the text as well as I do, I would actually love that scene. It's wonderfully done. Do you notice, what's he looking at when he's getting ready to walk away? When he's looking at Keira Knightley, what he's looking at on her? Her lips, right? You can see, you can just see it. It's good, he wants to kiss her. It is dripping with sexual tension. That is in no way part of the book. In the book, and in the 95 version, it is all about his arrogance. One of the things about this particular Darcy is this Darcy's inability to be socially adept is about his shyness. That's actually not Darcy's problem. Darcy is a straight up snob. And that's why Lizzie's good for him, because she sets him down on his butt and is like, you're not gonna talk to me like that, right? Which makes, Lizzie's a proto-feminist. We can't call Jane a feminist because that concept doesn't exist at that time, and Jane was a Tory, y'all. Jane was conservative. She was not gonna say people shouldn't get married and things like that, but the sheer act that she's writing was a feminist act, right? And to write these characters like this, and I don't think they say this one, oh no, he does. When Mr. Collins says, you probably won't ever get another offer, he's not wrong. And then that would make Lizzie a burden. And I don't even know who would take, Lizzie's sisters, if Jane married Bingley and Lizzie didn't marry Darcy, he would have to take care of her. Bingley would have to take care of Lizzie, which is, not good. So yeah, Emma, that's a good one, because it's in and of itself, the scene is great, but it's not in keeping. Because it's not him going, I shouldn't marry you, you're beneath me. That's basically what he tells her. You're beneath me. The inferiority of your birth. Wow, dude.
Can you remind me in the book, so I know in the 1995 version, the rescuing of Lydia is very protracted.
Yeah.
And it takes a number of men who occupy different social positions.
Yeah.
Right, so it takes Mr. Bennet and her uncle and Darcy, and they each kind of have a different role in that. But I film, of course, it's condensed and it's basically just Darcy and we see nothing.
Yeah.
And so the stakes, I think, are lost, right?
Yeah.
Or muted. Where I'm going with that is, do you remember in the book if the uncle plays as much of a role as he does in the 95? And I know that that's an extremely specific.
No, he does. In the book, actually in both, but it's much longer in the book. So when Lydia takes off, right? So and they actually kind of just go pretty quickly with this.
So fast.
Yeah. So Lydia, gets invited to go to Brighton. Let's all go to Brighton. My favorite line, another great line. A little sea bathing would set me up for yeah. It's great, Miss Bennett. So what happens is Lydia goes to Brighton with the Foresters. Lydia pursues Wickham. Wickham doesn't care about her. Wickham doesn't have to care about her. He's good looking. He's wearing his red coat. He's awesome, right? And so what happens is they take off. Ostensibly, Lydia thinks they're going to go get married. Wickham had no intention of marrying her. And so Mr. Bennet goes to try to find them. Trying to find someone in London at that time period would be impossible. Like, I have no idea how one would go about doing that. And so Mr. Gardner then leaves. They're out on their little trip to they didn't actually quite make it to the Lake District, so they're in Derbyshire, which is where his place is. So everybody rushes back to the Bennett's house, and it ends up being Darcy is the one who seeks them out. And it's this kind of interesting convolution of Darcy understanding what the connections are for Wickham, and then from there he finds where they've been stashed, and then he gets them up. But he makes Mr. Gardner make it look like Mr. Gardner does all of this. He doesn't want Lizzie to know that he has done this for her. And he has done it for her, but not so that he can marry her. He's done it because he realizes, because that's the beauty of this novel, is both of them understanding how ridiculous they've been, right? That they judged on appearance, they judged on first impression. The actual original title of this novel is First Impressions. And so he ends up having Mr. Gardner be sort of the stand-in. And it is Lydia that says the thing, and then Lizzie asks her aunt, and her aunt writes a big letter, because most of the letters get taken out of this, which is also not an issue. So yeah, it's a lot longer.
If I'm remembering correctly, in the book, Colonel Fitz, whatever his name, and Keira Knightley or Elizabeth Bennet have a much closer relationship than they do in this. So why do you think they chose to leave it out, other than time? Yeah, I'm guessing time mostly. I mean, any of that stuff would have, if you think about, like, the book itself is one of her larger ones. I'm trying to think how many pages it is. And the other thing about the Austen that makes it hard is so much of its narration. Emma's the only book that actually takes place from Emma's point of view. All the other ones have multiple points of view, right? So you're gonna have to set up all of those points of view, which would take a little bit longer. I think he ends up being a character that they can cut pretty easily. And I do think in the book that he is more enamored of her than she is of him, right? I think she's just more interested that, like, he and Darcy are cousins, and she's like, you're so affable and you're so not. So how is that a thing? Would be my guess. Madeline.
One of my favorite scenes is in the ball when Lizzie runs into Darcy and the camera has to pan away because he's so tall. Are the height differences accurate?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I would have to look that one up. Dang it, you would come up with the one question that I didn't prepare for. I'm not sure. That's a good one. Keira Knightley herself is actually rather tall-ish for a woman. So I would guess they're pretty close. Fun fact, the dance that they do in this version is the same dance that they do in the 95 version. The music's just different, but it's the same. It's the four, can't remember the name of what this country dance is, but they're four across. And they do that thing where it makes me seasick a little bit to watch it. I don't know if anybody else is like that. What else?
There are 17 versions of Pride and Prejudice. Have
Yes.
you seen all of them?
Me?
Yes.
Does it feel like, because you live with me, that I've seen all of them? No. Would you like to know my favorite adaptation?
I'm going to guess you like the Bollywood version best.
No, but close. And I'm now blanking on the woman's name. It's a Pakistani adaptation, a Pakistani family, and it's called Unmarriageable. What's her name, Bonnie? It's so good. Yes. Sonali. Oh, it's so good. And what I particularly love about it is she does this thing. Okay, I'm gonna get a little teachery for a minute. She does something called code meshing. So, you know how sometimes, like, if you talk to your friends, you might talk to your friends in one way, but you might talk to another group of people in another way, so depending on your audience. So there's a lot more to this concept, and it really specifically has to do with literacies that are tied to class and race and things like that. But code meshing is when you sort of switch, code switching is when you switch. But to code mesh means you would take something that's part of your home. Lived literacy is how you talk at your house, how you whatever. So if you were a Spanish speaker at home, but you go to college, they're not going to let you necessarily speak Spanish unless you are, in Mexico or somewhere else where they might speak Spanish or Spain or whatever. So code meshing means that you take your home language and you weave it into what you're doing. If you've ever read like Gloria Anzaldúa or Pablo Neruda does this, like some in his poetry and stuff, and it's lovely. And so in this particular novel, she code meshes. So she just leaves words and things that are Pakistani words, she leaves them in. And so I had to go educate myself by looking at those words, and so I know so much more about it. And now know so much more about the conflict between India and Pakistan for that reason too, which is pretty cool. I love that.
There is a new version that was just announced.
Yes,
Yeah,
with the gal that,
Emma
Olivia.
Corrin.
yes, she plays Diana in The Crown.
And Jack Loudon will be
Yeah.
Mr. Darcy.
I'm
And
gonna
it's
say-
I just learned it's 6 episodes.
That
so-
feels, why do y'all think that is? I'm curious. Why do you think that so that will be the 18th adaptation? Why? It is a good story.
I was gonna say because Persuasion flopped.
Yeah.
Well, that was a bad
If you
adaptation.
really want to hear me get mad, talk to me about Persuasion, because I'm still angry about that. I literally have the entire novel of Persuasion on a poster that's above my desk in my house. That's my favorite Jane Austen. But why?
I think we are desperate for the idea that a man actually changes his ways when he's called out on it.
I love that you said that, but let's be equal
He's not the
opportunity
only
here.
person.
He wasn't the only one. What's the famous Lizzie line in this? There's the moment that she figures something out. What is it? I never knew myself before now. She also figures something out, but Jane really did it. There's a meme, and I'm not going to get it right, but it's something like Jane Austen really had it figured out, that whole I'm not going to fix him kind of concept. Like, no, thanks, no thank you. Go work out your stuff for yourself. Why else do you think we're still thinking about
I
her?
was just gonna say, you made a comment about it earlier, but I just really like in the 1995 version how like smug he is.
Oh, yes.
Like it's just great, just at every corner. And then also Lizzie, the comment that she makes about when she sees his house, she was like, I really liked him then. And I always liked that.
I mean, she in the 95 version, she said something like, of all this, I might have been mistress. Right? Like, she sees the house and she's like, damn, girl, I chose unwisely, right? Like, she really because in addition, like, the house ends up, it's like, I'm gonna get this term, it's Schenectady, Andrew, is that the thing? So Pemberley stands for, like, all the power that he has, right? So she's the mistress of Pemberley Man. She's at the top of the food chain by that point. And that's not where she is too. One of the things Joe Wright talks about, which I do appreciate and love, is she started writing this in the late 1780s, right? What's happening in the world around that time?
A little bit of revolution happened.
Couple of revolutions, right? We've had the US Revolution, the French are getting ready to get feisty, the British are a little worried. And so you start to have some odd mixing of the classes, which is not their favorite thing. And the balls are different. Did you notice the differences? What's the difference? First ball is an assembly, so it's a public one, so everybody can come. And then the second one you have to be invited to, right? That's Bingley's. And so you can see the difference in it, right? Like, it's not as boisterous, it's not everybody's having a good time. That first one is really a mixing of the classes, which is kind of interesting. And so Joe Wright talks about that. He wanted it to be more gritty, and so he places it, because it's published in 1813, but she's writing it in 1787. And he sets it then, right? So the clothes really even looks a little different than the 95 when you're moving into corsets and other things that I just shake my head about. And so he wants it to be a little grittier, and he wants it to have that feeling of, he wants it to be more realistic and less stylized and romanticized. And so you can see that happening. And there was a point to this, which I've now forgotten based on what you just said.
Oh, I said his smugness, and then I
Oh,
also
yeah.
said
The house.
The house, yeah. And so I love, like, their house, Lizzie's house in this one is not like that. The house in the 95 version, the BBC version, is beautiful and pristine, and all the pea gravel is in the right place. And this one's like muddy, and there's chickens everywhere. I mean, I think I saw the pig is going through the house, right? Do I remember that? Okay.
And the reason why he had that shot
Yeah.
was solely because Joe Wright, the director, was like so in awe of how big that pig's testicles were. That's the only reason it's in there.
Bonnie, this one's for you. So the fact that he put that lens on the pig's testicles, male gaze.
Yeah.
Which is a difference than, how much time do I have?
You have about 12 minutes.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk about the hand. Who wants to talk about the hand? What is it about that hand, Flex?
It's romantic.
Why?
It's yearning.
Well, he wasn't allowed to touch her.
Yeah. Except that, did you notice neither one of them have on gloves? And I leaned over to Andrea, I'm like, that wouldn't happen. That's not a thing. What? Yeah. She didn't have on gloves and he didn't have on gloves. That's like having sex, man. Okay, Emma, you brought this up because this is so as this became the 20th anniversary, right? And people are talking about this idea of yearning is definitely in some sort of discourse that's floating around. What is that about? Do you think?
Why do people talk about the yearning so much, or why is the hand flex?
No, I think the hand flex represents the yearning. What is the yearning about?
I think people it's like a really it's a really like romanticized trend right now about yearning. Like people want you to grovel and that kind of thing.
See, but that's so interesting you say that because I didn't think of yearning as groveling, but I think it could be. But I thought it more as hopeful.
It depends on who you're.
It depends on your
internet. It's kind of going together, but not in pure.
There's definitely something about the humbling of him, right?
Yeah.
But again, Jane in the book, she's gonna humble Lizzie too, which is interesting. Here and then Emma's mom.
So that's the thing. Like every little thing that he did with this movie, zooming in on the testicles, that pig's about to get slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I think doesn't it show up? Like I leaned at Andrew and I was like, is that the
on
pig?
the table and right
Yeah.
So it's all these things of all like the whole. When I think of Jane Austen, I think of she writes books from a unique perspective of women who have some sense of power over an autonomy, right? Lizzie isn't in this book or movie saying, oh, I'm so scared I might not ever get married. Never. Mm-hmm. And so I think like you're gonna keep seeing this theme over and over and over again because women were still kind of finding our space in this world and like claiming it. And this was something that was being done in the 1700s. That's radical. So you can continue to build off of that through every generation.
I mean, everything old is new again, right? Like, there are no original stories. We're just telling them in a different way. I love that. I mean, and then, Dawn.
Okay, one thing.
I did not stack this audience, y'all. These are just.
One thing that struck me, and I think this is a trope that does not always bear out, because the whole thing is they both misjudged each other and then they find out they were wrong. I've experienced where my gut was right, but I overrode it and then got myself in trouble. So I think there's a part of that's a little romanticized, that's like, oh, I maybe I'm wrong, but I was really right. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, for sure. But also that concept of lovers and enemies, that's slow burn. Bridgerton. Oh.
But I also think it has to do when you're going back to yearning and why that's so prevalent. I think another big trope that's becoming really popular is the he falls first. And I think that's interesting because it's always been women that have been talked about, like trapping a man into love or being the one that's always the first to fall. So for him to be the first one to recognize that he's fallen for her.
Why, I love this. It feels like it's about vulnerability. And it's, gentlemen, I have 3 boys. I want you to know I love you all. But I'm gonna say something. I think there is something about where we are right now. And I luckily am not on the dating scene, but I don't think I'd want to be based on what I'm hearing from my students and see them shaking their heads. And there's something about that's where the yearning is that someone's willing to be vulnerable with you. And what's interesting is to that end, you could then, it doesn't have to stay heteronormative at that point, so then you can get different versions of Jane that are taking on all kinds of different ways.
So one of the things that I love that they do visually in both versions is the visual deconstruction of Mr. Darcy. When you first meet him, he is very tight buttoned.
That cravat is...
Oh, he is so tight, like everything. And slowly, as Lizzie gets more and more under his skin and brings him into her reality, he becomes what he is at the very end, where he's just completely disheveled and his hair's a mess and he's not all put together. And they do that in both versions. And I just think that is just the most subtle but like strong.
Name the 90, what did they do in the 95 one that works? The lake scene. The hand, so in this one it's the hand, if you haven't seen the 95 version, so in this one it's the hand flex, right? And then, did you see the second time that it pans to his hand?
Yes.
What happens?
It's relaxed.
Right? By then he's opened up, he's become vulnerable, right? In the 95 version, Colin Firth. Now, if you're a Gen Xer like I am, Colin Firth is the thing, man. And he jumps in the lake and he comes out and he's got on that white lawn shirt. And that lawn, that type of material would have been very thin, right? And so it's good stuff. So it's the same. Yeah, it's the same. Sorry, I'm showing my image. Yeah. But he goes back and his shirt is untucked and he's like walking next to his horse and his Hessians that are like gorgeous. But the shirt's untucked. And that's a whole other Darcy. It's a different Darcy. Yeah. And you see it too in this one, you're right, in that last scene, he doesn't have any socks on.
And he's completely like his shirt.
Yeah, his shirt's unbuttoned.
His shirt is unbuttoned. He's got chest hair showing. He's disheveled. He's definitely like, she has undone him.
She has.
I just loved, as a director, making those choices to visually break him down the same way that she did.
The visuals of this are stunning. So my favorite is, first of all, I also love Donald Sutherland. Shout out to Donald Sutherland, right? The hand thing and then she does the hand thing too. It's just like the hands are. Somebody should write a paper about this. And then you know the story about the shot when they're kissing in the last with the sunrise. They had one chance to get that shot because rain was going to come in for multiple days and they had to move on. And so they had to get that one shot then. And that is expensive, right? You can't reshoot things. Anybody want to talk about whoever was smart enough to cast this cast? Did you notice the people in it? Who is Caroline Bingley?
Rosamund Pike.
No, that's Jane.
You're right, Yellowstone.
She's Beth Dunn. She's Yellowstone. Yeah, right? Mrs. Gardner. Where are my Downton Abbey people?
Yes.
Yeah, she's Downton Abbey.
Carrie
Mulligan. The entire cast. So Keira Knightley's 20 in this movie. Joe Wright was very specific that he wanted to cast people that would have been close to the age. So Keira Knightley, Rosamund Pike is Jane, Keira Knightley, Carrie Mulligan, Jenna Malone, and the Mary Bennett, I'm sorry to say, was twice married to Elon Musk.
Twice?
Tallulah Riley, twice. Now she's married to the kid from Love Actually. Thank you. Thomas, thank you.
What a jump.
Thank you. Yeah. Claire's like.
You got time for one more.
Okay, one more. Somebody say. Oh, yay, new people. Go ahead.
I feel like Bingley's sister was at moments the most undressed out of all the other women, and I was trying to like make sense of that.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you said that because I did lean over and say something. So when they're coming through the receiving line at the Netherfield ball, what did you notice between Caroline's dress?
But she has
She had tiny little. So what is she representative of?
Well, she's trying to use
Modernity.
sex to get to Darcy.
Well, I think
The whole
she is
time.
too. But she's coming from money, so she's bringing in whatever the newest fashion is. What are the girls wearing? They're wearing country frocks. She would have, and you see this in the '95 and definitely in the book. The book, Caroline straight up is like, oh, look at them in their little country gowns. Oh, she is. But you know what? The funny thing is again, like, you don't really get the viperness of Caroline Bingley in this version. Like that's something that's missing if you have it. That I think does exist in the '95 and definitely is in the book. Right, real quick one.
I had a question about like class, and also
Yeah.
you're talking about like some of the proto-feminism with, you know, just Jane Austen writing this. So, you know, there's like obvious like a lot of tensions with class, especially with like, you know, Keira Knightley or with, you
The
know,
Bennets.
Liz the Bennets and upward. But we don't really talk about or see the class tensions below the Bennets. So I'm interested in if there are critiques of that, or also trying to think about the people maybe who would critique it might not have had the chance to read the book.
One of the things that people have often said about Austen is that they get frustrated because they think that she doesn't take up the issues of the day, class being one of them, definitely military conflicts and, you know, the revolutions and stuff. And then other people will say, no, that's not true. You have to look at it from these specific ways. So one of the things that this does way better than the '95 version is show that this is a working farm. Mr. Bennett gets about £2,000 a year is what he makes. And so what that means is that he has invested a chunk of money in what they would have referred to as the 5% or the 10%. So that's like their, I don't know, maybe it's like treasury. I don't know, Nate, what would you? They've invested it in the government somehow, maybe T-bills or something. And so that's the interest that they live off on. But that farm, that his estate would have to produce something. So you saw the hay that the guys were, that haymaking would have been a big thing. All of that poultry and stuff, that poultry was for selling. I mean, they also ate the pig, but, or I guess, yeah, and so that is something that this version does more, is to show you that Mr., because one of the things about Mr. Bennett, because he's not a great guy in the novel. He's Donald Sutherland definitely brings some gravitas to him that does not exist in the book. And Mr. Bennett's not horrible. He's
henpecked.
Huh? He's henpecked. Well, he chose with his eyes instead of with his brain. And because Mrs. Bennet was quite the thing back in the day. And so in this version, you see all the people that are dependent on him. You see all the people that are dependent on the family. And Jane Austen herself actually didn't belong to that. She was middle class adjacent. Like, her dad was a rector, but he didn't make very much money. He only got about £200 a year. Had, I don't know, 7 kids. Jane and Cassandra are the daughters, and the rest of them are boys. One of the boys got adopted out. That's not unusual. And he took in boarders. So the thing about Jane that might account for her proto-feminism is that she and Cassandra were educated alongside the boy boarders in that house, because her dad, who was the rector, had been to Oxford, and so he was educated, and that would be very unusual. Girls wouldn't have gotten that same education. As a matter of fact, Jane and Cassandra were sent away twice to schools, but almost died in one, and then the other one was bad, and so they came back, and so they would have learned alongside the little boys there, which means they would have learned. So you heard Caroline Bingley talk about they should know the modern languages. They would have learned the classics, Latin, Greek. They wouldn't have just learned German. But a lot of people critique Jane for that, but that wasn't the world she lived in. She lived solidly middle class, which is interesting. Okay, Claire, there's one. Okay, and then this last one.
Just the time here. Was it very common for people to be able to travel and go into other people's homes like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. So
that
it,
was
well,
a thing.
just the one percenters like Darcy. So, but yes, you could go and apply to the housekeeper to go in the house and walk around and see the house. You wouldn't do that if they were there. So, this is there's a little more time to do it in the 95 version. But yeah, isn't that strange? I guess you would, like, if you think about like garden tours that happen like in Plaza Midwood or. But yeah, no, it is straight up like you would just be like, ding dong, can I come see your art? Hey, you are not rolling up in my house. I think we're done, but I'm happy to stand here and talk more as my students stand on the topic. Thank you guys. Read the book. I cannot recommend it enough. And Persuasion is the best one.